Hello and welcome to the Book Business and Brand Building Summit. I'm your host, Jesse Krieger, and on this summit, it's all about how do you leverage your book to build your business and brand? How do you use a book as your number one business development tool and really build out a comprehensive business and a personal brand that both accentuates and elevates your status through having a book and really making taking the steps forward to get your name and your message out there in a big way, which is why I'm excited to introduce our guest on this interview, a man named Doepker. Derek, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Jesse?
I can't complain. It's like 105 degrees in Vegas, but I got the AC cranking, so I can actually wear a button-down shirt for this interview and not be a pile of sweat. And so a little bit of background on Derek. He's the founder of Excuse Proof Fitness, multiple-time author, best-selling Amazon author, and really has, I think, a lot to say on both the parallels of the mindsets needed to attain a peak level of physical fitness and to help others do the same, as well as the diligence required to be a multiple-time author and build a pretty comprehensive and thriving business and brand. So I'm excited to jump in and talk about that. And maybe that's a good jumping off point is, what parallels do you see, Derek, between, your mindset, your approach to your own personal health and fitness, and how and where that overlaps or interplays with your writing and the attention that you give your business and brand?
So there's definitely a lot of overlap. And I'm getting a little bit of an echo. Are we able to that? Great. Yeah, so there's a lot of overlap between physical fitness and peak performance in that area, as well as the performance in business. And that's book-based business or really any type of business. So one of the things that jumps out right away to me is the importance of consistency. So when it comes to working out, most people know it's not going to be going to the gym once every month. It's not going to be doing this super intense workout and then all of a sudden you're going to get in great shape. So it's not about how hard you work every now and then. It's about that consistent daily effort. So consistency is kind of the obvious thing that I think a lot of people think about. What I notice many of my fellow authors that struggle with is this idea of taking these courses, going to these summits, learning all this information and applying it, and yet not seeing the results that they want. And it's so frustrating. I know for me, when I started out, it's like I was reading the books, I thought I was doing everything right, and I wasn't seeing the results. And what I found was it was really a matter of just like in physical fitness, if you see the guitars in the background, it's like learning music, it's a practice. And that means that no amount of reading a book on playing guitar, no amount of reading a book on how to lift weights or do these things is going to get you the same type of results as actually going in, daily practicing. And it's going to be weird at first, like first time doing some workouts or some new exercises, you're not supposed to do well at it. Your body isn't programmed to do well. So it takes that practice and being gentle with yourself in a sense to go, it's okay that I'm going to kind of suck. I keep going at it. And this applies especially for authors and content creators when it comes to the rough draft and getting that first draft out there, and particularly when it comes to shutting down that critical mind. That as soon as I start typing something, the critical mind jumps in. Do you ever find yourself like type no, that kind of, I don't like that, and then deleting it and then going forward and then one step forward, one step back, and it's like that constant fight to get into that flow state. Well, that flow state is just allowing yourself to create and then going back and editing later. And that's a concept that most creators will say the same thing. You got to get the editor, the inner editor out of the way, take that hat off, just put on the creator hat and allow yourself to create something and then go back later and improve it. So it's overcoming that perfectionism, and that's what I find is very much similar when it comes to the physical fitness, because it taught me in physical fitness training that it's always a matter of improving. There's no I made it. There's no I'm in great shape, I'm done. It's a process, and it's a never-ending process. And so treating my writing, treating my business like it's this ongoing process, there's always another workout to do, or more improvement that can be had. Going in with that mentality helps overcome that resistance that comes up when people say, well, I should have made it by now, it's not working, and then they quit. But when you go in with that process mentality, you have that perseverance to keep going.
Yeah, I really like a lot of what you're saying there. And I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes, may or may not be appropriate for the health and fitness component, but for writing, Ernest Hemingway said, write drunk, edit sober, right? And, you know, it's such a simple little phrase, but what I think it speaks to is what you were talking about, Derek, in terms of that critical mind. I mean, if you sit down and you write 3 sentences and you're like, no, maybe I didn't want to say it that way, and you start editing yourself before you've even actually created something substantial, then you're really pulling the rug out from under yourself. The other thing I really like that you touched on, maybe we can go into a little bit more detail, is like looking at authorship, looking at business as a practice, just as physical fitness is. I mean, you know, if you hit your weight goals, or if you hit your, you know, muscular goals, then that's great. But if you stop working out for even a week, let alone 2 weeks or a month, it's not a permanent status that you've achieved or accomplished. And, you know, I think maybe there's a little bit of a difference with a book, in the sense that you can finish the book and now call it done, and it will continue to exist in that form. But there's that final threshold before you actually make the decision to say, okay, this is a finished piece of content, this is ready to ship. And, you know, would you like to elaborate or share any more about how you've spanned the gap, how you apply some of the mindsets that have really taken you far in fitness? And people watching this, if you don't know Derek, if you just put in his name, you'll see some pictures of him just looking seriously jacked. So, you know, clearly have worked that practice to the point you've obtained some really incredible results. And I think the same is true in your, you know, your authorship and your online business. So is there anything else that you would want to share on that subject with our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, sure. There's a few more points that come up. So going back to that idea of a rough draft, it's giving yourself permission to lower the bar or not even have a bar. There's not much of a standard. It's that early creative process, that early brainstorming process. And so I create sort of an analogy. It's like, what's going to happen if you go and you take the heaviest weight you could possibly lift, and you just wake up first thing in the morning, kind of tired, and then you go to just try to lift the heaviest possible weight, or you go try to do like a full-on sprint. What do you think is going to happen?
You're going to pull a muscle or hurt yourself.
Exactly. You're going to hurt yourself trying to go full out right away. So typically most of us know it's smart to warm up and to start below your potential. And it's not that doing something below your potential is underachieving in this case, or slacking. What it really is, it's just smart warming up, so you gradually ramp yourself up to your potential. So my first draft is like a warm up. You know, it's like I'm just getting the creative juices flowing, just like I'm getting the blood flowing into the muscles. So giving myself permission to go, you know I can do better in some abstract way. But if I sit down and go, okay, I just have to come up with this amazing masterpiece, it's going to be too much pressure. And it's just like if I go to the gym and go, okay, I've just got to load up the heaviest weight I could ever possibly do. It's too much. So you ease your physical body into things by warming up. Well, it's the same approach when it comes to your creativity. Allow yourself that warm up of some free writing, some brainstorming, and of course, creating something without an attachment to it being great at first. And then you go through that improvement process, like I mentioned, which is just like adding a little bit more weight, going a little bit faster, exerting a little bit more effort as your body can ease into it. So it's safe when it comes to your physical body. That's the safe and effective way in how you reach your highest potential physically. And of course, as we're talking about the parallel, that's exactly what it's going to be doing when it comes to your writing or your content creation. And touching upon that warm-up idea, it's also important. There is a direct connection between physical and the, let's say, mental creative process, which is before I start writing, there's one thing I absolutely make a consistent practice, which allows me to unleash the creativity to get into that flow state. Because what happens for some people, if they don't do this, is they sit down to write or sit down to create something, and it's hit or miss if they're feeling inspired, or they're stuck, or it takes them a while to get into flow, or it doesn't even happen at all. And it's the simplest practice. It's the sharpening of the axe before cutting down the tree, and that is actually moving my body for a few minutes, getting up, doing a little bit of, for me, it's dancing. For some people, it's exercise or walking. Some people, they go out and they walk in nature. But actually doing physical movement and getting the blood flowing does have that direct effect on your creative ability. So I'll make sure if I just, if I just sit down unwarmed up physically at my computer to start writing, maybe I'm going to be feeling good, maybe not. But if I just put on some great music, I dance for a couple minutes, I'm in a peak state. So we're talking about a practice. That peak inspired state is something to manage, is something to practice, is something that, some days you got it, some days you don't. But if you don't, you can create it on demand. And so I make that a practice to get into peak state before going into a creative session. And that is directly related to your physical body and your physical health.
Yeah, I love that. And for everybody that's listening, that's not just related to the health and fitness. It doesn't mean you have to go like lift before you write, but and also I think there's something to be said about personal types. And I've interviewed a bunch of people for this summit, and some of them have a consistent practice of getting up at like 5 in the morning and writing. Now, I don't know if they stretch or have some coffee before they do that, but there's no way I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning and be on my top of my game in terms of a creative output. But what I've found that works for me, and then I'd love to hear a little bit more of your practice as well, is like, just getting up, exercising first thing in the morning, and then eating a healthy breakfast and sitting down and sort of riding the wave from, the physical body relaxing after exertion calms my body and lets my mind be 100% focused on the task at hand. I find I have a 2 to 3.5 hour window right after that morning routine where I always try and tackle my most important projects, or if I'm doing writing or something that needs to be internally generated and as opposed to being reactive to other people's agenda, that's the best time and way to do it. If there's anything else to share on your practice when you're working on a book or when you're building a new product or doing a launch that you do physically or mentally or emotionally to get you into that peak state so that you're creating at the best of your ability.
So a couple things I can mention, and I want to say you make a great point there about the personal practice, and that what works for one person might not work for another person. So at that point, it's important to step back and look at maybe some higher level principles behind what's going on as opposed to the actual practice. So you can learn from the practices that people have what the principles are. So this comes really down to, if we were to go big picture, it's just getting yourself into that state where you're effective in your focus and you're creative. Because if you've ever had the experience, if you're listening to this and you can recall times where you sat down and ideas flowed and it was almost effortless, in maybe 2 hours went by and it only felt like 30 minutes. Imagine being able to create that on demand. And it's not always possible to get into that perfect peak flow state. However, the more you can create these practices and these regimens, the more you can get that, to be a consistent thing to show up. And so it really is that sharpening of the axe by creating a pre-writing or a pre-content creation practice. So going back to my personal stuff, like I said, dancing is the big thing for me. I put on music. I love to dance, so I just put on music and I dance. And like you said, it's not lifting weights. Like that's not, I don't need to go do a full-on workout. It's really just a couple minutes to do that. Another thing that's not a consistent practice for me, however, whenever I do it, I notice it definitely elicits a lot of creativity, and that's going out for a walk. Or even in my apartment, I do a lot of pacing. So before creating something, I found, I wasn't even aware of this for a long time consciously, I found that, a lot of my best ideas, I'd be pacing back and forth, maybe talking it out to myself for 10 minutes, and then I'd go sit at my computer and type it out. And then I might find myself back up, walking around, maybe recording something on my phone. And it's not always the same practice every single day. that it's things like that. I've noticed how much of a connection there is between the physical movement of the body and the level of creativity and energy. And one other thing that you pointed out that's great is the timing of the day. So for you, you found that having sort of getting yourself warmed up into it, you get some exercise, you get some food in first, and then you're most creative. I find this very similar for me. I work best in the mornings. I used to say I wasn't a morning person. That's changed over time, and it can change if you know implement certain practices. And so I do usually get up, do some meditation, do maybe some physical, definitely physical movement. It could just be like that dancing type of stuff, and love, get some coffee in typically. And then after a little bit of that sort of stuff, I find that after at least about an hour or so, then I'm in a good state to then start the creative process. And I've also honored that if I need to create later in the day, I'll do what needs to be done. However, if I can, when I structure it, I'm much more efficient getting my creative work done earlier in the day, and then more sort of management, editing, the less creative stuff, the more maybe logical, you could say, type of stuff done later in the day. Works well for me. And I've also noticed it's not a one size fits all thing, but I've noticed there's a consistent pattern of a number of people that say something similar to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, that I've met very few people who say that their peak creativity, peak productivity hours are later in the afternoon or into the evening. A few people that say, late at night, but I think that's also a little bit different in the sense that there's, not as much activity going on to be distracted by. Most people that have an impressive creative output and results in their life seem to stack these things in the morning. And what I'm hearing from what you're sharing, Derek, is that it's not just like, okay, now it's writing time, and you've got this block, and 1 minute before it, you're doing something else, and now it's writing time. It's more of like an arc where you're moving your body, you're dancing, maybe you're taking a walk, and it's like the pregame that ramps you up to the point where when you actually do start writing, you're at your peak in terms of focus, mental clarity. And I think there's something to be said about having the physical body utilized in some way so that it just sort of calms down and you don't become like antsy and bouncing your leg or something if you haven't moved around in a while. I think that becomes distracting as well from the productivity and creative output side of things. I think you cover that in pretty good detail, so thanks for your input on that. And I think what I'd like to ask you about is there's a lot of people perhaps watching this that are writers and also in the fitness industry in some shape or form. And my own experience as a publisher, we've done a couple books focused on, one on weight loss and one on peak fitness through body weight exercises. And my experience in launching them is that it's a very competitive space. It's a competitive category. And I know you've got your one book, 50 Fitness Tips You Wish You Knew, has close to 200 reviews on Amazon, and from all outward appearances, it seems to be doing very well. So what would you say to people that are writing about fitness, writing for this industry in this category, about breaking through the noise and getting heard, getting their books seen and read?
Yeah, so for fitness, and this is going to apply to really any of these more competitive categories. I've also done stuff in self-help, which is pretty competitive too. So that whole sort of world of lots of competition, lots of people getting their books out there. I mean, there's probably like 100 new diet and fitness books every single day coming out, it seems like. And I'll say that, first of all, actually coming back to an inner shift that happened for me was I hesitated for a long time to even get started in like fitness or talking about something like that, because I thought, well, who am I? Like, I'm not like a big celebrity. This was back years ago. I was a little bit about my backstory. I was a struggling musician in LA, working as a valet parker, broke, sleeping on an air mattress. So I'm like, I don't have a lot of money to go advertise, do big advertising to break through the noise. I don't have some special system that's never been done before. So there was a lot of this, like, who am I to even attempt this? So much of it's already been done before. I have nothing new to offer. So what had to happen for me So for the people out there who can relate, who maybe you haven't even got started yet, or you're holding back a little bit because it's like, I don't even know if it's worth the effort. A couple shifts happened for me. The first thing was I realized that people aren't buying the information. So it's not the information that they're getting from you, it's your perspective that they want with your books. And so that's very important. I'll put it another way. They're not buying what you say, they're buying how you say it. And this will tie directly, that's a mindset thing, and it's also how you market something. So with your book marketing, it's the packaging you put on. It's how you get the information across, the way you make it easier for certain types of people to understand. It's the way your backstory might have something to do with, you know, connecting with certain people who can relate to you as an author. That might be what people really buy into. So it's not just the information, otherwise they go out and read encyclopedias and stuff on this. So they read an anatomy book, but people don't do that. They want it put in terms where it's like, I understand this person, I like the way the author speaks, I connect with them, their style, their message. And so taking it now to a music analogy, it would be like different styles of musicians. You know, it's not necessarily one's better or worse than another at a high level. It's people have their different tastes and their different moods. So when you realize that, then you can own the fact that you have your own style.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I love what you're saying. And, you know, an analogy that I often use is, well, one, it's just important to know that people don't just read one book. It's not like there's this big selection and ultimately people just pick one. Like if you're buying a washer or dryer, you know, you're going to look at the options out there and then ultimately you'll make a choice and then you've got it for like 10 years. But with creative content, with books, with training and information, you know, people don't just consume one. And if you're anything like, you know, us, I've got 5 books on my desk here. I've got like 50 behind me. People that are really passionate about it want to get their hands on as many different perspectives as possible. So, you know, I just want to underscore what Derek's saying. Don't psych yourself out by looking around and saying, oh, but somebody's already written about that, because there's only one you, and your perspective, your unique voice has something of value. You know, you also said what I consider sort of from talking to hundreds and hundreds of authors, you know, the number one thing that psychs people out is those 4 words, who am I to? And I even made a whole training, because as an acronym, who am I to spells wait. And it's like the waiting game, right? As long as you're asking yourself, who am I to be a fitness expert? Who am I to give advice on this subject or topic? Then you're asking the wrong question, because it presupposes a negative answer. And I think if you shift that to like, who can I help? Who can I serve? And you shared your perspective on, you know, circumventing that obstacle, which is like very subtle, but also very sneaky, because it can prevent you even beginning to take action. It's not like something where you've got your book out there, now you make a big mistake and it stops selling. That's the kind of a mindset shift that I think a lot of people watching this may need in order to really start taking consistent action. So, you know, anything else that you'd like to share on getting out of your own way and just really focusing on delivering value in terms of the content, the training, the service that you provide to both your authors and your training clients and customers?
Yeah, so I love that, the wait, W-A-I-T, who am I to? And it's a question that I'll bring this up. So those types of questions and that resistance, it's similar to the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. We're all going to face this resistance. So understanding that that's normal, that's a normal question to ask. And who am I to doesn't have to be disempowering. It's like, why am I to? Because people need to hear it my way. I mean, if you think to your own life, can you imagine, or can you think back of a time where you heard something and it clicked finally, but you've heard it so many times before, said by other people, said at a different time, but somehow one person said it, maybe just the way they said it, the words they used, their tonality, the time in your life when you heard it, it clicked. You had an aha. And you can be that for someone. You'll put things in your own words, you'll put things in your own packaging, and there's going to be people who they need to hear the information from you the way you have to deliver it. As I got feedback, as I had people coming to me for advice, for fitness advice over and over, at some point it finally clicked. I go, okay, I guess people do want to hear from me because they see I live it. I don't have to be some big celebrity for people to listen to me. In fact, at some point that can create such a disconnection from people that some people like the fact that maybe if you're not a big name or big, you know, all these credentials after your name, whatever, some people want that more relatable person with the message. So that's one thing. Everything can be a strength or weakness just depending on what you do with it and how you respond to it. And from a very practical standpoint now, it's like, well, how do I stand out from the noise? Once you embrace that and own that, now it's thinking with the end in mind. So the thought process is, what's the book that I'm going to create that stands out from the market, grab their attention? But that's actually the second question in a 3-question series that will give you the competitive advantage. The first question is, how do I fit in? What else is working? What do people want? So I looked at what people wanted and I model success in the fitness world, giving people what they want. Then I ask, how do I stand apart? And this comes down to a couple things, you know, a captivating book title, a hook that's on it, something that's different. It could be a unique system that you've put together. And by the way, a unique system doesn't mean you have to invent something crazy. It can just be like these simple acronyms. So, you know, like the WAIT, right? We can come up with WAIT and create little memorable things for people. One of the people that you might be hearing from, Steve Scott, he coined the term habit stacking. Stephen Geist talks about mini habits. So in the habit world, they're putting their own name onto something. It's not that the concept has never been talked about before, but it's how they package it. And so that novel name or an attention-grabbing title or being controversial can work, having a personal story, having results. For me, I went to the habit market with my fitness stuff, with one of my books, and my thing was, it's how to create better habits in 5 minutes a day. That was my hook. It's a 5 minutes a day. Everything in the book can be found in psychology books and in other books and things like that, but I put it together in a 21-day system, 5 minutes a day. So it was my packaging of it that made it unique, and then it's the title of creating it in 5 minutes a day that gives it that unique hook. So be thinking about what else is working. I see that people are interested in habits. Okay, now how do I stand apart? Start thinking like that. What's the clever little different angle that I'm going to take on it? And then finally, the third thing comes back to what you were saying about people buy multiple books. Then I go, now how can I collaborate and turn competitors into collaborators and companions? So then that brings it all around. Well, let's all work together to share each other's work and to promote each other's books, because really at the end of the day, I'm going to recommend their books. They're going to, like, just in general, because I'm going to say, look, read, you know, these 10 books on this topic. There's 20 business books that you can read that are going to be great on on book marketing specifically. Then there's another 200 books you can read on marketing in general, right? So there's always an opportunity to work together, to be sharing each other's work and information. And so that's another sort of mindset approach that I encourage authors and business people to take, is have that competitive mindset early on, that you want to stand out and you want to sort of beat the competition, but then wear it like a hat, put it on to get creative, then take it off once the creative process is done to now start working together with others.
That's actually a fantastic analogy, because I mean, it really speaks to the heart of the matter. Like, on the one hand, if you're writing a book and you're writing it without a co-author, then you do need to look out at the market and say, well, where do I fit in? It's not just something that's created in a vacuum. And in so doing, you want to do something better than what else is out there. And that's sort of the competitive aspect to it. But I really like the analogy of putting on a hat and then taking it off, because once it's created, you know, people will buy based on their own preference, their own trajectory in life and what they're looking for at the time. And there's so many opportunities to collaborate. It's something that's been made very clear to me over the course of doing the interviews for this summit, how many people collaborate as either co-authors or promote one another's book launches or program and product launches. And that tends to be the big differentiator between outsized success and just incremental, you know, organic success that moves at a slower pace, is the extent to which you have relationships and collaborations in the industry. And I want to draw a line under one other thing you said there, Derek. like, my perspective on what you shared is that, you only need to be a few percent better than what's out there. It's not like you need to create the entirely new, never before seen health and fitness book that far surpasses everything that's ever been written. You create something that's like looks a little bit better visually or has a unique angle, like 5 minutes a day for 21 days, lets people wrap their head around, okay, I can commit to that, so this is the book for me. And that type of positioning is just a marginal amount better or differentiated than what's out there, as opposed to this brand new out of left field thing that no one's ever seen or heard of before. There may not actually be a market for it, in which case you have to work harder to educate people to what it is that you've created. So I'm really glad that you touched on that. Anything else you wanted to say on that topic?
Yeah, to bring it back to tie in what you just said, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because as I said, the first question is, how do I fit in? Because if people get that question out of order, then they go, I got to create something totally brand new. How do I stand out? He said it would be like trying to create something in a vacuum, and it's not effective. So you make your life so much easier when you can go in and model success. And then, like you said, it's brilliant. It's just a little tweak. It's a few percent better, or even if better isn't always the best word, it's just stylistically a few percent different, or it's got its own little angle on it and positioning that's going to speak to a different market. And with that being said, that's where it's a matter of being bold and being willing to turn people off. So when it comes to marketing, one thing that I've learned and continue to learn and relearn and get reinforced is this idea of actually rejecting certain people, and as much as you're attracting certain people. It's very hard to attract diehard fans with a very lukewarm sort of message that doesn't really have any edge to it. So if you can be edgy, if you can be, and that doesn't mean controversial, it just means for instance, if I have a book on 5 minutes a day, one of the things with a lot of information out there, it might be cutting out all the fluff and getting right to the point, or creating shorter books. Now that's going to be great for the busy person who's like, I don't need all these details, just get to the point. But I know I'm going to push away the people who want all the facts and all the information, right? Or then some books I create that are very long, and they're take you on a journey through all this different stuff, and it's not like a bullet points type thing. It's much more immersive. And I know the negative feedback I get on that is, well, there's a lot of fluff, it could have got to the point. It's like, but that wasn't the point, right? But you can't please both these types of people or all these different markets. So it's owning the fact that this is what it is. It's going to reject those people. Ideally, you turn them off in the marketing side of things, so they don't even buy the book in the first place and leave a bad review. However, it's creating with a mindset that here's the people that are going to love it, and here's the people that are going to hate it, and owning the fact that it's a good thing if some people hate it, when those are people that are not your ideal readers or customers or whatever. The longer I've been in business, the more I've dealt with some people that I'd rather not deal with, and then I appreciate, how could I have repelled these people earlier on? That's an important skill set that I didn't develop quite as much as when I was just thinking, how do I get more people, more readers, and trying to get everyone in.
It's a really interesting point, and one worth all of everybody watching this taking to heart is, I think my perspective on that is just being okay with the fact that you're actively not pleasing certain groups of people. There's nothing really to be gained by trying to be all things to all people. It never works. There's no example of something that is all things to all people, but for some crazy reason, when we're writing books or creating something, it's not as common to think like, who am I turning off in doing this? You think about, who is this for? Who can I serve? At least that's my approach to all that. And, an example, one of these books that we published, The Struggle is Real, I really saw this brought into contrast. Like, it's written, and it's a man and a woman who each lost over 100 pounds naturally without pills or surgeries. And the book is written in a very conversational, story-driven style. And the negative feedback we got is like, where's the scientific research backing this up? And, didn't you have an editor read the book before you put it out? It's like, yes, we did have an editor, but it's written in a conversational, informal style. Okay, so those people didn't like that aspect to it. On the other side, people love this book. I mean, they've been on TV, they're in newspapers now where they go to the gym in their hometowns. People recognize them and come up and talk to them because they shared their personal story and were vulnerable, as well as gave, health and fitness advice. And I think that just speaks to your point, Derek, that, if there's some division, if there's some divisiveness in the message in the book itself, then it attracts the people that are attracted to it, are strongly attracted to it. And, just don't worry so much about, or as you said, figuring out how can I really turn them off so they don't even get the book and then become disappointed in the first place, which I think is really good advice.
Yeah, and an analogy is sort of like opening up a restaurant. And I'm not going to open up a restaurant. It's just a restaurant. We just kind of serve some food, some different food. It's like generic restaurant. What kind of food? Is it American food, Italian, Mexican, like whatever. And then if I go, well, I'm going to open up an Italian restaurant. This is serving the best Italian food. The owner of the restaurant doesn't need to worry about the people who don't like Italian food. It's like, this isn't the restaurant. You're probably not even going to come here. I'm going to advertise this is Italian food. Just stay away if you don't like it. I'm opening up this restaurant for the people that do love Italian food and want that. And yet it's one thing to understand it intellectually. It's another thing when human emotions get involved, which is the fact that we all hardwired as human beings want people's approval. We want to fit in, and there's kind of this mindset like, oh, just don't care what some people think, or haters are going to hate. Just don't worry about the haters. The thing is, we're programmed to care what people think. So it's more about, what do I care about more? And this is something I think Tim Ferriss mentioned something like this. He's like, I'm more concerned about the 1,000 people that love my work rather than the 10,000 or 100,000 people that hate it. And his focus is on the people who love it and who appreciate it. So when I come up with that sort of fear of rejection, or what if some people don't like this, I look at it like I got a plate of food and I'm going into a room where I know that there's some people in there that are starving, like they're gonna pass out if they don't get some food, and there's some people who aren't hungry, and there's some people who don't care for the food that I have on my plate, and they might tell me they hate it. Well, am I gonna not go in that room and offer food to the people who are starving? I got to be willing to go in there and say, look, who wants some food? I know I'm going to feed some starving people. I know some people aren't going to want it. That's fine. I'm okay with either of those. But if I hold back, it's sort of like now with my book, if I go, well, some people might not like it if I put this out there. Yeah, but what about the people who are starving for this information? Am I going to let them go hungry? Am I going to let them starve? Who am I more concerned about? If you had to save the life of a loved one, and in doing so, someone's going to call you an idiot and say that you're stupid, are you going to hold back and, I better not try to save their life because someone might call me stupid? No, you're more concerned about the person whose life you're saving. You have the mission or the service to the people who need you. That dominates the worry about what some people might think, or that rejection. So it's normal and natural. I say, embrace the fact that you care about what people think. Just care about something more than those people's opinions.
I love that. And when you're focused on those people that really are hungry for the information you have, that really love what you're doing, it makes it very easy to deal with any negative criticism, because then you can just say, well, then, you're not my target audience, you're not my target customer, and that's fine. Instead of trying to be reactive and somebody saying, why wasn't the book written like this? You say, oh, okay, I'll go back and try and change it. You don't have to try and please people that aren't in line with what you're doing. And, keeping the one caveat that you're open to feedback and you have humility around it, but keeping that focus on the people that really love what you're doing, I think is great advice, because the more of those people there are, the more bigger audience you have for anything you create in the future. And, you can build a really thriving business with just hundreds, if not, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 really dedicated fans is more than enough to carry you forward, as long as you're continuing to create, evolve, innovate, and put stuff out there. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing about the rejection aspect, is I'm learning that one part of me, especially when I first started out, is I want to help as many people. I want as many readers as possible, selling as many books. And what I've come to realize is that my my big passion is making a deep impact in people's lives, and that's not necessarily a numbers game. You know, if I'm doing coaching, for instance, I love small group coaching and I love one-on-one coaching because I can go really deep with a person, and I like that in addition to, you know, reaching a lot of people with my books. However, since I own the fact that I'd rather make that deeper connection and really help some people, that just entails playing up my strength and going, there's a certain type of avatar that likes my books or likes my personality or whatever. It's okay to just really focus on serving them as much as I can, as opposed to trying to write for the books and speak in a language that's trying to please people that I don't really connect with, or do things like that. And this is just a side point I noticed with some of my earlier writing. I was trying to please people or speak to a certain audience that I've come to realize, you know what, they're not really the audience that I'm most excited about serving or helping. I want them to be helped, but I'm not necessarily the best guy to do that. So the more I've gotten into my own authenticity about this is what I have to offer, what I have to say, who I am. These are the type of people that love it. These are the type of people that hate it. It's all good. Let the people who hate it find their person that they can get help from. I am going to focus on serving these true fans, these dedicated followers, and giving them my all. And with that clarity and with that just being okay to not worry about some of those other people, then I can show up and be excited and passionate about it, as opposed to feeling like I'm pulling teeth trying to like just please people that are not the people I'm meant to serve.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. And, you know, perhaps let's touch on one more topic and then we'll start to bring this full circle and to a close. But I'd love for you to share, you know, how your business and your life has changed as a result of writing perhaps your first book, but now numerous books. You know, in what ways has your life and business shifted being an author, being a best-selling author, and having a lot of your content out into the world in book form?
So before I was an author, a successful author, I mentioned I was struggling musician. I was a broke valet parker sleeping on an air mattress. And that went on for several years as I studied, as I learned, as I attended summits like this and soaked up all the information that I could. And there were first couple books didn't sell well at all. And I had a online training course for fitness stuff with like 18 hours of content, all these videos, and I could barely sell it to my own friends and family at a name your own price for like $1 if you wanted to get it. So it was a struggle early on. And once I had my first big best-selling book, which was the 50 Fitness Tips You Wish You Knew, that hit #1 in weight loss back in December of 2012. That was the game changer for me, because after that, all the, know about all the doors, but many doors started opening up that weren't available to me before I had the best-selling book. That includes financially, the royalties that came from that. That means that I was now could call myself somewhat of an authority, because I could say I'm a best-selling author. And so when you are a best-selling author, when you have that label that you can attach to yourself, even just being an author is a huge accomplishment, because so few people actually write a book. So many people talk about writing a book, so few people follow through. So when you follow through, you get that privilege of saying, I'm an author. And once I had that, it then allows me to get on podcasts and get on access to different outlets, guest blogging. I mean, all these different things to get your name out there through the media open up, because I'm an author of a book. So then I created training courses in multiple books, and the result of that was quitting my valet parking job and now getting to wake up every day doing what I love, writing, having books, doing coaching, having online courses, all this stuff that I wanted to do for so many years as I was struggling. Now I'm doing it. Now I'm living it. And back in late 2012, 2013 is when that turnaround happened. So it started with the book. I was doing a number of other things, from blogging and YouTube videos and all these things that are great, but the financial impact and the ability to quit my job and now wake up and do what I love, that happened when I had the best-selling book. And that's why I'm so passionate about opportunities like this to come and share my knowledge and help other authors and aspiring authors to get their book out there, get it created, be bold, play big, get your message out there, let you know if the first couple don't work out, hey, it's okay. I know it's scary to think like, well, what if I spend all this time and money and create this book and it doesn't sell? And it's like, look how many years people spend and how much money people spend on college education for a degree they don't use, or, you know, they no guarantee of a job. It's like, oh, spending tens of thousands of dollars in 4 years of your life. People don't worry about that going to waste. But what if I spend, you know, a couple $100s on a cover design, and maybe it's like, I look back and it was a struggle, but I'm like, it was a very relatively cheap and quick struggle to learn how to hit best-selling author and do it over and over and over again. So that's my little bit of my background story, and what the lesson I got was, if you value lessons more than successes, you'll never have to worry about losing ever again, because you'll always gain the lesson. So that was my takeaway from the challenges that I face. So if you're going through the challenges, if you have challenges coming up, and it doesn't matter where you're at, you're going to have some challenges coming up, I would share and encourage you to remember the thing that I remind myself, which is, if I get the lesson from it, it's worth it down the road.
I love that. I love that. If you get the lessons, then the successes. What was that? Let's say that one more time. That seemed really valuable.
So one of the lines was, value lessons more than successes.
Value the lessons more than successes. I love that. And I guess to bring this to a close, Derek, maybe you can share some words of inspiration for people that are still in that place of struggle, that are, you know, valet parking or working at a restaurant and sleeping on a couch, and, you know, or have big dreams, but just they haven't materialized yet. What do you say to that person?
One of the quotes that's really resonated with me when I heard it was Jim Rohn. He says, "We all suffer one of two pains, either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret." And so that was, when I heard that, it put it so succinctly, that going after my dreams, when that meant moving to LA, when it meant working some jobs I didn't care for, when it meant creating these courses and these books and these things that didn't sell right away and for years, and it's just like, oh, when is this going to happen? You know, I realized that if I would have ever quit, I would have a lot more regret. And of course, it's easy, hindsight being 2020, coming out the other side of that part of my journey. I still have plenty of things coming up that are, you know, big things coming up for me that will be their own challenges. But looking back, it's easy for me now to go, well, yeah, of course it was all, you know, mistakes are just a learning experience, and failures the price for success. And we hear these platitudes and these different things. But I think what helped me when I was in that process was, I was already thinking to myself, this is all part of my before story, my before and after story. So as I was struggling, I'm like, the more struggle I got, the better of a story it's going to be when I hit that success point. And I kept that mentality going, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Eventually I did have the breakthrough success, and then I can tell the story about broke valet parker to #1 best-selling author. But when I was going through it, I maintained a sense of gratitude, that I'm grateful I get to do this, because I'd have a lot more regret if I wasn't trying. And this is part of my before story. The worse the struggle is, the better the story it's going to make down the road once I have my breakthrough. And so I would share that little mantra, that this is all part of my before and after story as you're enduring some of these challenges and breaking through them.
That's great. If you're watching this and you're still in a place of struggle, or if you haven't made that final push to get out there and haven't been acknowledged in the way that you know that is possible for you, then just think of this as a part of your before story. What a great perspective. Derek, you know, thanks so much for coming on. I'll share something here on the tail end of the review, that one, I reflect that after you have that book, you know, the media opportunities open up. You get inbound interest, inbound requests to do things of this nature. But the thing I like about you, Derek, is you have a certain hustle where, I'm not even sure where you saw the Book Business Brand Building Summit, but I got this inbound email saying, hey, my name's Derek. I think I'd be a good fit for your summit. I can teach on these 3 points. You know, here's a link to my stuff. I was like, you made it really easy to just say yes. And so, yeah, I don't really need any reaction from you on that. I just want to acknowledge the hustle, even as you're moved beyond your before story, right? So being an author with multiple books, having an online business that's doing well, still focusing on opportunities to get out and share your message and inspiration, I think speaks to your character. And I'd love for you to take us home with what's next? What's next for you, Derek, and where can people find out about you and get more into your world?
Yeah, so you can find out more about me, ebookbestsellersecrets.com. It's my website for authors, and excuseproof.com, so you can find my fitness books and links to some of my books on Amazon. And what's next for me is I will be creating more training courses, programs, live events for people who have a message that they want to share. So that's authors, especially, that I love working with. It can also be speakers and people that really want to package their message and put it in content of some form, books and training courses and things of that nature, because you want to make a positive impact on the world. So as I've gotten more clarity, of course, I love helping all authors, and I'll be doing coaching and different things like that. My vision and my mission is really moving towards helping the world changers and the leaders out there that want to make a difference in the world, and help you package that message and get it out so you can make that difference. And it creates a ripple effect where I feel like I'm doing some good by helping others do their good and fulfill their mission. So that's the big picture answer, and then it will show up in whatever the different forms it takes.
Well, looking forward to seeing what's next for you, the next thing that you create. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on this interview. Thanks again to Derek Doepker for this inspiring hour of conversation and inspiration. And we will see you all on a future interview. Hope you're enjoying the Book Business and Brand Building Summit, getting a lot of value out of it. Signing off for now. See you soon.